Okay. I'd like to call the Rules and City Government Committee to order. Please note for the record, in attendance, committee members, Alderman Arnett and Alderman Savage. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda. We've already had a discussion about our time restraints, and I believe we're only going to deal with one item today, which is 0820, harbors and waterfront areas. So I'll entertain a motion to amend the agenda to that effect.
I make that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, next item is approval of the minutes from the June 9th meeting.
I move approval of the minutes from the June 9th Rules and City Government meeting.
Second.
Okay, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, I think at this point, we'll go to environmental matters to begin their meeting.
Hold on 1 second. Okay.
Okay. I'd like to call to order the Environmental Matters Committee meeting for July 2nd, 2020. And all the members are present. And entertain any kind of motion to amend the agenda to essentially remove everything except for the 0820 and the approval of the minutes.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. All right. Anything else?
Move approval of the minutes.
I second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes, we say aye.
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 All right. Minutes are approved. All right, Ms. Green, I think it's back to you, or back to Sheila, Alderwoman Finlayson.
Okay, under legislative agenda, we have 0820, harbors and waterfront areas ode updates. For the purpose of updating certain definitions, removing obsolete language, requiring regular pump out of a vessel's holding tank, making stylistic changes, and generally related to updating Title 15. Ross, is this your legislation or is it the mayor's?
It's actually Ellie's.
Mine and the mayor's.
Oh, okay. Alderwoman Tierney, do you want to speak to your legislation?
Thank you, Alderwoman Finlayson. I thought best, because of the confusion that we discovered in the language at the last Rules and City Government meeting, I think there was a question of language that was stricken and some references to an overriding code that wasn't stated. I thought it best that Beth Bellis, the harbor master, and Ashley Leonard, assistant city attorney, speak on my behalf, if okay.
So I'm happy to begin, and I'll just ask Ashley to jump in when she feels it's appropriate. Just to give the group some background, this Title 15 edit was done at the urging of former city manager Teresa Sutherland, and I mean, for good cause. There is a lot of Title 15 that could be cleaned up and made better, for sure, but it is an arduous task. It's a large task. And so what I tried to do to accomplish my, I forget, I think they're called, we just talked about them.
Amendments?
No, so like each year you have certain objectives and goals that you have to reach. As a performance measure, exactly. So in order to accomplish my performance measures, I tried to take a piece that I could bite off and work with that was reasonable. But to that end, unfortunately, I don't think that the Office of Law had the time to go through it and do as much research as I would have liked them to. That is not their fault. That was the time constraints that we were given. So I think we're going to move forward on portions of this. And Ashley can speak a little bit more to that, but I think we're going to let some of it go so that possibly our attorneys can study the state law a bit more and see how it marries up with a city ordinance.
Ms. Bellis, may I ask a question? Are you proposing that we amend out certain parts of this legislation then? That we eliminate certain parts of this legislation? And if so, is there, Ellie, Ms. Tierney, do you have I guess what would be the amendments?
No, that the purpose of this discussion is to with Ashley's concurrence, is to figure out the best way to go. If we withdraw and rewrite, or if we can amend. I don't have any amendments prepared.
What I would say is I feel confident about all of the changes, but I'm not sure that it doesn't need to be studied a bit more by the Office of Law. So I think that Ashley and I talked about moving forward with three or four of the items and letting 2 or 3 of the items go by for further study. But I guess I'm not a student of how this legislation moves forward. So maybe I just need to know how we should go next.
Well, I guess my question is, or maybe Ms. Leonard can tell us, what is to be deleted from this legislation? I see Ross's hand and then Alderman Savage. I'm sorry, Alderman Arnett and then Alderman Savage. Can we have Ms. Leonard answer first, please?
Okay. Do you want me to go ahead and speak?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I think we're going to proceed with the changes to section 1502.030, which is the definition section, which is just a cleanup because we should never refer to locations or addresses by the property owner name, because property owners change. So this is just a change to refer to the actual address or other description. I believe we were going to withdraw or otherwise amend out the changes to section 1506.030 and 1506.040 for me to do more research related to Maryland law. We were going to proceed with the changes to 1506.090 related to pump out. We were going to proceed with the changes to 1510.020, which is a minor clarification about needing an application for fee waivers. We were going to proceed with section 1510.080, which does a few minor changes to how numbers are written and also includes new language about pump out. We were going to proceed with section 1510.100, which clarifies how things are currently done at street ends, including who may anchor there. And that's just to adopt current practices. And we were going to proceed with section 1510.130, which is to clarify current practices for how public mooring buoys are made available.
Do you have those written down for us?
I mean, the only changes besides the only amendments I would make would be to remove the amendments to 1506.030 and 1506.040. That would be my proposed amendment for Alderwoman Tierney.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Can we start with the first one, 1502.030?
Sure. So this one refers
we're on page 2, line 10, 11, 13, 15, 13, 14.
Correct. So this one is just taking out the reference to property owners. Faucets no longer owns 110 Compromise, so it's really not applicable it's really not appropriate to keep faucets in there. While the Department of Natural Resources does still own the docks surrounding 69 Prince George Street, the state has issued a letter of surplus, so that ownership might change. And generally speaking, it's good legal practice to not refer to individual property owners in a code or a document that is going to last longer than the ownership could. So that all this is doing is taking out the current property owner or the former property owner's name and just referencing the actual addresses of the property.
Okay, so the first piece, and I'd like to take it, and gentlemen, if you have questions about each piece of this, please let me know. I guess I should hopefully be able to see you. So in the first section, page 2, 1502030E, the corrections, the amendments that are there, you just justified why those changes are made. Okay. Alderman Arnett?
So thank you, Madam Chair. I understand the nature of the changes and obviously agree with the opinion of the Office of Law about not referring to ownership, but I do question whether we can claim authority because this has to do with all of the docks and piers and so forth, whether we can claim authority to the properties that are currently owned by the Department of Natural Resources. And this is something that has been off and on a point of discussion, particularly with the Office of the Mayor. But so can we actually put in that we're going to be controlling walkways and piers within the boundaries of the parts of the property that are still owned by the state?
We are only claiming ownership of the ones that we currently have control over. So DNR, Department of Natural Resources, actually owns, I think it's 69 through 71 or 73 Prince George Street, which is the whole dock area. We currently only have control of one piece, which is the 69 Prince George Street.
Okay, that's what I didn't understand. Is it possible to get some kind of a map? I think we asked for that last time, something that actually shows the parts of the dock that are in and out?
Yes, I have a map.
Okay, good. That would be very helpful.
Yeah. Now, obviously, we might need to amend this if this changes and we get more control, but that just remains to be seen.
Right. So that was the question I had written down. Will this have to change if given possession of these docks from Natural Resources? And I think the answer is yes. But you've explained, so all this surrounding 69 Prince George's Street are only those portions of the dock which we already have control of.
Correct.
Correct.
Madam Chair, I certainly have no issues with this at this point then.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Savage?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I have no problems with, so I guess the proposal would be to move forward with the changes in 1502-030. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm fine with that as well.
Okay, thank you. So let's go on. Was there a question?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just so I understand, are we going through them consecutively regardless of whether we plan to pull the two, or are we going to save those for last?
I have to go through consecutively.
We're going to go through it consecutively.
Okay.
And give them a chance to
approve what we can. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Good.
Okay, so should we go back to Ms. Bellis or Ms. Leonard to go on to 16.06.030? It looks like it's all being eliminated, so that's going to stay, correct?
It's going to stay for now. I need to do more research on how it might conflict or overlap with existing state law.
By going to stay, we're going to eliminate that. That's what I meant.
Right. We are going to remove that request for that change request.
Okay. And so
for now, it will stay in the code.
So we're not eliminating lines 20 through 23.
Right. So for the ordinance is requesting the elimination of this section. For right now, we'd like to withdraw that request and just keep this section as currently written in the city code until I can do more research.
Okay. So we're going to unstrike lines 20 through 23 is your interest. Okay, Alderman Arnett and then Alderman Savage.
I'll yield to Rob because I went first last time, but I do want to speak.
Well,
I'm just going across according to the pictures on the screen. You guys can whatever.
Well, I was just going to offer a motion to make that into an amendment that we unstrike lines 18 through 23
Second.
as a rules in government and environmental matters, I suppose. Okay.
Second that motion.
Okay. May I ask a technical question? Ms. Leonard, the word reserved in line 18 is in brackets. Is that significant?
All that was going to do, that'll come out too, is that instead of deleting and renumbering this whole chapter 15.06, they were going to put reserved in so they didn't have to renumber everything.
So that means that 15.06.03 remains as originally written.
Correct.
Okay.
But there is an ancillary to this, which is in our discussion at the last meeting, part of it was about the decibel from revving hinges and that sort of thing. And the reason for taking it out is because the harbor master and staff don't have decibel readers.
Mm-hmm.
I want to, when we get this to treating this again, I want to give them those meters. That's one of the things that I get a lot of complaints from people along the water side. And rather than not have this be enforced, I would rather properly equip the harbor master's office so that they can. They're certainly much more adjacent to this than the police would be, which is the other alternative is for people to call an officer, and the officer, unless they bring out the police boat, doesn't have any way to get out and talk to these people, whereas the harbor master and staff do. So that one seemed to me more an issue that we have to properly equip the harbor master. The speed limit one, I understand laws looking at that, but the decibel ones, that's really critical to residents along the water.
Alderman, are you in opposition to this amendment?
No, I seconded it, so I'm in favor. I'm just reminding that when the Office of Law and the Harbor Master go back to this, I would not want to see that struck, and I would rather see us properly support the Harbor Master.
And this is a fiscal item, so make sure that you make yourself a note so we can fund their decimal readers.
Yep.
Okay. There's a
Chair.
motion. Rob, did you have something to add to that?
No. Thank
Alderman
you.
Savage?
Nothing.
Sorry. Alderman Tierney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ashley, just so I understand, when you revisit this and you get the requirements from, assume, the state, will you be more clear on that reference instead of us assuming that that's the default legislation? Because that was one of the questions before, is would like to see what you're using for the law.
Yes, the hope is to research the specific sections of state law that would apply or be duplicative. And if they do apply or duplicative, to reference them in here.
Perfect. Thank you.
And if I may,
Sorry, Ms. Bellis?
so if I may add, the decibel level meters were about 5% of the issue. The much bigger and more important issue was that it conflicted with state law in a way that made it completely unenforceable. And so I really wanted Ashley to have more time to speak to that, and she doesn't.
Great. Good.
Okay. So there's a motion on the floor to unstrike in lines 18 through 23, page 2 of the legislation. All in favor, hearing no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay.
Is environment
Thank
going to vote on this simultaneously, or?
Oh, am I voting?
Well, we're on to the second item now. I'm sorry, who's chair?
So-
Well,
You should take a
I
vote
would,
for.
yeah, I would like to say if the Environmental Matters Committee would like to recommend the same amendment.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I will entertain a motion.
I motion.
Okay.
So-
All those in favor of,
Second. I second.
all those in favor of that amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry,
Back to
I
you.
just thought it was rules. Okay, the next item is under 15.06.040, swimming and water skiing prohibited. Ms. Bellis or Ms. Leonard, what are we doing with that section?
My understanding is we're going to do the same thing with this section as we did with 15.06.030. I want to take another look at state law before we do anything. So I would suggest an amendment to not make any, to remove the requested changes. And we'll revisit it after I've had a little bit more time to look at state law.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Second?
A second.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Can you repeat the motion for that one?
It's to unstrike lines 25 through 29
Okay, thank you.
and remove the 150 numeral on line 29. Well, I guess that doesn't matter, actually. Never mind. Just unstrike lines 25 through 28.
Okay, thank you.
I also move that for environmental matters.
I second that.
All those in
Okay,
favor from environmental matter?
So-
Oh, I'm sorry. We're still in discussion.
yeah, it's not
Getting
confusing.
confused.
All right, so Rules Committee, there's a motion on the floor to unstrike in lines 25 through 29. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Environmental
Environmental matter, sorry.
matters. All those in favor, please
Aye.
say an aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Back to you.
Okay, next item 15.06.090, vessel toilets. Letter B is the addition, and of course, re-lettering. Ms. Bellis and Ms. Leonard?
Beth, do you want to explain the practical ramifications
Sure,
first?
I can speak to it now. I mean, so already there is a section in the city ordinance that says that the harbor master may decide who may anchor based on several factors. And one of those factors is how much they pump out. So that's a really tough thing to enforce because it's not unusual to have multitude of people that are anchoring out. They live 100% of the time on their boat. And when we come and check on them and say, hey, are you pumping out? They may say something very weird, like, I've trained my body and I only go on shore. And then unfortunately, we learn through investigation that they have been pumping overboard. So we would just like to make the existing ordinance enforceable. So we would like to say, like, if you have a family of 4 and you have a 20-gallon tank, that you need to pump out at regular intervals if you're living on board permanently and you're anchored. So this wouldn't affect boats that are at marinas because maybe those folks are using the restroom. It wouldn't affect anyone except for those folks that are anchored. So by their very nature, there's no other place for them to use the restroom except for on their boat. And so typically what we do is it's every 2 weeks, but they fill out an anchor registration form and they say how many people are living on the boat and how many gallons their pump out, their marine sanitation device can hold.
Okay, Alderman Arnett?
So I totally in favor of this, except, and I think I'll turn to the city attorney on this one, regular intervals doesn't seem to be particularly well defined. As you described it, Beth, that would be something that you would make a determination based on the size of the boat and the number of people, which makes a lot of sense to me. But is this language enough to withstand a test? I mean, if somebody says, I did it regularly, I did it once a month, are they going to be able to skirt this legislation, or do we need to have more definition of regular? Or, Mr. City Attorney, is that something that would go into a regulation?
So I'll speak first, and then I'll let the attorneys talk. So there is actual science behind, as weird as it is to talk about, how much people void per day. I don't like to delve into how much people use the bathroom. My rule of thumb is 2 weeks, and so I don't really study it that carefully. I think it's silly to do so. So I guess I left it at regular intervals as determined by the harbor master, because I don't know if I'm going to meet someone that has like a 100-gallon marine sanitation device with one person on board that works full time. So I guess I didn't want to nail it down, but I would certainly be willing to defer to the Office of Law. But I can tell you in practice, for us, it's every 2 weeks, because I really don't like to get into people's bathroom habits that deeply.
Mr. Lyles,
Yeah.
where do we stand?
Yeah, the word is fine. The regular intervals can be decided and deciphered by the particularities of the particular boat. And the harbor master in her regulations can cite that. As a matter of fact, if there is, and I'm not totally familiar with the process, but if there is an application that would allow someone to dock, I'm assuming that they give her certain information that would allow her to make certain assessments as to how often something would be dumped. And I think that's part and parcel of the regulatory process, in that there's an application that has to be completed and we have to monitor part of that job. So I think it's fine at regular.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't a way that people could slip out by saying, I do it regularly, I do it once a month or whatever. I mean, this is totally consistent with the no dumping zone that we're trying to put through for both the city and the county. So I just wanted to make sure that wasn't wiggle room. So I'm satisfied. If you're satisfied, Mr. City Attorney, that
we're
Beth has
satisfied.
legs to stand on. All right.
Yep.
Alderman Savage?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I guess my question is for the harbor master. So in terms of how this is worded, how would this impact vessels that may not have a holding tank, but they are anchored? Because, you know, I know some people who have really small 16-foot boats, sailboats, and they don't have any kind of a holding tank. What they do have is one of those self-contained travel potties, which we use as needed, and it's self-contained. But you just kind of bring it back with you to the marina whenever you take the boat out. But and what about composting toilets too? So what happens in those scenarios where they may not have one?
Yeah, so you've asked a lot of questions actually. So if you have a 16-foot boat, I don't think you're living on it, and you're not permitted to anchor a boat that you don't live on in the city of Annapolis. So you must live on it. So it can't be 16 foot. So assuming if I'm assuming that you're talking about a 30-foot boat and you have a porta potty, in my experience, that is not an acceptable way. And in my experience, those people do in fact dump overboard. So what we have done so far is to say, if you are living permanently on an anchor in the city of Annapolis, you need to have a proper marine sanitation device and you need to pump out. Because a porta potty is not a way that you can live permanently without dumping overboard. So, and then you had a second question, but did that answer your question? And then I'll go on to composting toilets.
Yeah, that does make sense. I guess my follow-up question would be, so this pertains to, you said folks who live on their boats, but are these the moorings that we have there that people, I guess, essentially rent from the city, or is this anchors in terms of just throwing down an anchor? And where's the restriction come in terms, or where's the requirement come in that those only people who use those moorings or anchors are those who live on their boats for extended periods? I guess that's the connection I'm trying to understand better.
So So far we have not had any people that live on their boats and live on a mooring. That hasn't been a thing that I've experienced. Maybe we need to think about that. I think you had two parts to your question, and I forget the second half.
Well, I guess it's just, you mentioned this pertains to those who live on their vessels, but so what's it mean when you say a person who anchors? So that's not on a mooring, that's just anchored traditionally someplace in a creek.
Right. Yeah.
And how's that distinguished from a person who can you just anchor if you're visiting for the day?
So you can just anchor if you're living for the day. And what the city requires is that if you're staying for more than 3 days, then you have to register with us. So you can't really get into your business unless you're staying for more than 3 days. But if we see you, then our patrol will come by and say, hi, I'm glad to meet you. How long are you staying? And if they say, well, I'm staying for a month. Okay, well, then you need to register with the harbor master's office. And so on that form, it says, what kind of marine sanitation device do you have and how many gallons does it hold? And that's when we tell you, okay, well, we have a pump out boat and we'll be coming around and we need for you to pump out every 2 weeks. And thank you for your information. And we collect all that in a binder in case customs comes by or in case we need to know, we found your dinghy turtled over and we're afraid that you drowned or you died. So we collect that if you stay with us for more than 3 days.
Okay. Well, I'm wondering then if this should be clarified, and maybe it's a question for both of you, and I asked with the law office as well, but should it be inserted there then? It says a person who anchors a vessel in city waters for more than 2 days or more than 3 days shall then have to comply with this in terms of pumping out at regular intervals, because then that would allow somebody who just comes for the day or the night and may have one of those portable toilets, and so they wouldn't have to fall into this requirement. It sounds like you don't necessarily inspect those, if maybe that's not the right word, but inspect those vessels unless they've been there for a number of days, and that's when this would kick in. So if that's the case, should we then update this to include some kind of day limit?
I mean, in my mind, that would never be an issue because you don't have to register, so you don't have to answer the question as to when you pump out. I guess I would defer to Office of Law on that, but it's not an issue if you're just staying for 3 days.
So you're saying once they're there for more than 3 days, they have to register. That's when you go to the boat and you say you need to register because you've been here for 3 days, and that's when you would start to clarify this pump out.
Oh, we might let them know the very first day, but if if it's Monday and they say I'm leaving on Wednesday, we don't need to have the discussion about a pump out because I'm going to assume that you're being a responsible human being.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. But it may make sense then to have something in there then that to have a trigger when somebody has to submit application or fill out a form. Not sure if the law office has any thoughts on that.
I wouldn't put it in the code. It seems to be working fine. And I wouldn't junk up the code with additional detail when the process takes care of itself with the application. And the application takes care of itself with the inspection. The inspection takes care of itself with the whole state regime on what you do with boats that stay in particular areas over a certain number of days. So there's a state law regime that we're just kind of adhering to, and Beth is kind of enforcing along with city code as it relates to the specifics of pump out. So I think we're okay. I wouldn't advise us to get into that because we may have to go back and research whether or not we're conflicting with state law in some of those respects as well.
Was that listed somewhere else in the code in terms of the 3-day requirement?
It is. It is. There's no code that talks about that requirement to register if you're staying with us for more than 3 days on anchor.
Okay. Well, I mean, it may make more sense to put this in that section.
I think if you look beyond where we are, still under 1510, I believe it is.
90.
90?
Oh,
80.
no.
Okay, we'll get to that though.
Yeah.
Alderman Savage, are you finished?
Yeah, for now. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I guess I still have a question about the compost toilets, actually. Is that something that would, you said you had some comments on that, Harbor Master?
Yes, I can talk to that. So compost toilets, if you actually look to the manufacturer, they're designed to be used for a period of time and then have a period of absence. So they can't compost if you never have an absence from a compost toilet. So it's really common, unfortunately, for us to have folks to say, I have a composting toilet when they in fact have no marine sanitation device whatsoever. Or for them to have a composting toilet and they pour all of their liquid waste overboard. And then I don't know what they do with their fecal matter, but I can tell you that if you look on the websites for composting toilets, they're not designed to be used with no gap in service. So if you have like a cabin in the woods, so you can have a composting toilet and use it for a month or 2 months, and then you leave that area, then it composts, because that's how the science behind it works. But if you never use that, there's no safe way to dispose of that fecal matter. So if you were to put that in bags and put that in our street end trash cans, that's not a healthy way to deal with that. So we don't mind if people transit through our waters and have a composting head, that's perfectly fine. We don't care if people have a composting head and they live at a marina because maybe they don't use their boat for a period of time. But we do mind if people anchor out and permanently use only a composting head, because what we've discovered is A, they don't have any marine sanitation device whatsoever and they're lying about it, or B, they're using a composting head permanently and they're pouring all of their urine overboard and they're disposing of their fecal matter in a very unsanitary and dangerous way at our street end trash cans. So what we have said is, you can transit through, we'd love to have you. You can stay at our marinas, but you cannot anchor out permanently with a composting head with no method of pumping out, especially because we're getting ready to be a no discharge zone.
All right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense too. Thank you. And just going back a second, Madam Chair, before I yield the floor, I guess, I still do, I kind of like to hear what the other committee members think, but I still am a little concerned because the way this is worded, again, a person who anchors a vessel in city waters, it just seems like the way it's written, it would apply to even those who are just there overnight. And I know the harbor master said she is not going to be even necessarily policing those per se, because they're not there for multiple days, but that's not really stated in this section.
I had a couple of questions, and the first had to do with what sounded to me as arbitrary language with the regular intervals. But I hope that's not my doorbell ringing. Sorry. But City Attorney Lyle said that he's comfortable with that language. And so I guess my other question for Ms. Bellis, I thought maybe this is only for the mooring, that we knew everybody who was out in our harbor at any given time. And I assumed what type of vessel they were on. Do we not have that kind of tracking data?
We do have that tracking data. We actually fill out some very comprehensive anchor mooring logs that it actually surprise you the detail that we have, and we fill them out every day. Okay.
So the big concern are those vessels that don't moor in our waters, but are more transient, let's just say.
I'm not sure what you mean. So by mooring, so when we say mooring, we can mean on mooring balls and we can mean anchoring.
Okay, I was thinking just the mooring balls, but anchoring has the same tracking system.
So two things. We have two types of mooring balls. One is an annual lease, and that is almost 100% city residents, and no one lives on those boats. So they have a dinghy at the street end, and that's sort of like their docking. So those pump outs are not of concern to me. They're just like boats. And then we have the transient mooring balls. And because those are grant encumbered, no one's allowed to stay for longer than 2 weeks. And because we also have a pump out boat that can come to them and pump out, it never really becomes an issue because it's a pretty short amount of time they stay with us. It's usually only 1 night or 3 nights or a week.
Okay. Okay, I think you answered my question. Alderman Arnett and then Alderwoman Tierney. Alderman Arnett, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm going to have to sign off here fairly quickly. So I just wanted to jump ahead for 2 questions. One is on the bottom of page 4 in section 1510-100 where it says stored. I really would like to know what the definition of or the meaning of the word stored is.
Alderman, can I come right back to you? But we have a motion on the floor, I believe. Do we not, Ms. Green, for 1506-090? Was there a motion?
No, there was no motion.
Okay.
I'd like to make one, but
Oh, go ahead.
so I just wanted to make a motion to make an amendment on page 2, line 40 after city waters insert for more than 2 days. So it'd simply read: a person who anchors a vessel in city waters for more than 2 days shall pump out the vessel's holding tank at regular intervals. That would at least bring it in more compliant, into more consistency with the actual practice.
Can you repeat that? Page 2, line?
Page 2, line 40, after city waters insert for more than 2 days.
I second that.
Okay, I'd like to hear from Ms. Bellis if that would be in line with common past practice or current practice.
That doesn't change anything for me. I'm perfectly happy with that.
Okay. All right, so there's a motion on the floor to add in line, is it in line 41?
40.
Line 40.
In city waters, insert for more than 2 days.
Okay, a vessel in city waters for more than 2 days. Okay, with appropriate commas, punctuation.
Yes, ma'am.
English teacher. Here, any further discussion? Hearing none. Alderman Tierney, do you want to speak for environmental matters or rules?
Environmental matters, because I'm not in rules.
This is
right.
Rules right now. So Rules Committee, all in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
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 Okay. I'm willing to go to 10, but it's up to Alderman Savage.
Well, I wanted to just go back to see if Alderwoman Tierney, your comment.
Oh, thank you. No, what I wanted to say is I understand Alderman Savage's concerns, but I think all of them, and if you could chime in, Assistant City Attorney Leonard, that all of that is really, really stipulated in 15.10 as far as the operation, anchoring, and mooring of vessels in city waters. That code section is very specific on everything Beth talked about. I just wasn't sure if anything needed to be, added. But as she said, it doesn't. If she's fine with that amendment, then fine. But I just want you to be cognizant that your concerns, I think, are definitely addressed in 15.10, the code section that is, which is specific to either dry anchoring or whether you're on a public or a private mooring. Do you agree? Do you agree with me, Ashley? Or
it is specified in section 1510-080C, which I just emailed all of you.
Yeah,
which requires any vessel anchored for more than 3 days. But I don't think it hurts to clarify in this section about the 2 days. I think they can coexist.
Yeah, I just didn't want to keep compounding. Thank you. Okay, got it.
I think for the sake of time, maybe I'll just jump back to the Rules and Government Committee. I don't know if we need another motion from environmental matters at this time.
Well, I'm willing to go to 1510-100. Alderman Arnett.
I just had two more comments, and other than that, I'm fine with this legislation. I did wonder what the meaning of the word stored is on line 43 of page 3. And I'm wondering on page 4 why we're striking out the two mooring types. I do think we have two mooring types. Aren't there moorings where people rent for a year and moorings where people rent temporarily, for short periods of time? So I just was not clear why we're striking that out.
So I can speak to that. So we don't have 1 month or more moorings because our moorings are grant encumbered. So our moorings are only of two types. They're only annual moorings, so they're for a whole year, or they're for transient, which means 2 weeks or less. So if we say like 1 month or more, that wouldn't be correct. That's not a thing that we can do anymore. And
all right. I didn't know that.
yeah, so I'm just trying to be complicit with our grants. That's all.
Okay, I'm sorry to have to run, but I did want to raise a separate issue, which isn't for this. And Beth, I know you're involved with this, but I think Kevin Scott, I don't know where we are in terms of harbor lines. We were really going great guns on trying to define harbor lines, and that seems to have just died all of a sudden, but that's for another day.
Alderman Arnett?
Yes.
I have a question kind of for you before you go, because and this would obviously impact, I believe, Ward 8 as well, but the 15.10.100, I kind of want to know more from the harbor master on this. It's inserts language that says only, I think, unless I'm reading this wrong, only dinghies that have an approved mooring permit can store them at the street end at the street ends. But I guess my concern with that is, I used to commute to work on my canoe and tie up at one of the street ends. And I think I did get a warning from the harbor master at the time, and I had to explain to them. But I'd hate to have people who do that and just tie up for the day or come down, canoe or visit, and just tie up at one of the street ends and be penalized in some fashion. But maybe I'm reading this wrong.
Yeah, I can make a really quick explanation for that.
Okay.
You can commute every single day in your canoe or your kayak, and there's nothing illegal about that. The issue is when you decide to stay overnight. So the city code already states that you can stay 2 consecutive nights or up to 10 nights per calendar year overnight. And that's only permitted by our mooring customers. That's by practice and also by contract. So if you paid like $1,000 or $1,800 a year to have a mooring, you would need to get to that mooring in some form or fashion, right? So you need to have a special sticker to keep your dinghy at that street end. And we allow that, but the code doesn't have a specific provision for it. So it's kind of weird, right? Because we're saying it's illegal, but then we're writing a contract to say that it is legal. So this cleanup is only just for me to say, this is by practice for many, many years. And this is because we could never rent these mooring balls if we didn't allow you to have a dinghy. But you can commute every day on your boat or your dinghy or even your motorized boat. And that's fine, but you can't stay overnight because then our street ends would be a cluttered mess.
Okay, well, maybe I guess the question for the law office then, because the way this is worded, and I think even the existing code is worded, is that it sounds like it would prohibit. It says a vessel, any unoccupied vessel may not be stored at a street end in city waters. So any unoccupied vessel cannot be stored at a street end in city waters. So what's it mean to be stored? Are we saying that stored is only overnight? Are we saying stored? Because again, I had a warning with the old code by the previous harbor master that I couldn't have a canoe down there during the day. So it just seems like that current wording needs to get changed as well as the proposed language.
And that was my question as well. What is the definition of the term stored? And I think Beth is saying stored means keeping it overnight, and it sounds like it's even more nuanced than that. So I agree with you. I'm not totally clear that this language conveys the same things that Beth just told us verbally.
And I'd be happy with the definition that Ms. Bellis gave us, but I don't think that's in the code right now.
You are correct. There's no definition for stored or storage, although it is used throughout Title 15. I suppose a simple solution is I could work with Beth to come up with a definition for those words to go into 1502.030.
Bingo, bingo.
Yes.
Okay. I was hoping that we would get through at least this piece of legislation, but clearly that is not going to happen.
Well, I'm content. I'm glad we had this time to talk about the legislation. I think I understand it now. I didn't at our last meeting, and I'm very happy with the direction it's going. I want to thank both the harbor master and Ashley for going through this again, and it makes it much clearer to me. So I'm more than willing to let you and Rob carry on with rules, and Ellie and Rob to carry on with environment. I just have to run.
Okay, if I'm comfortable with the law department creating the definition of stored as an amendment from the rules committee, if you're comfortable with that, both of you.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd be comfortable with that. But I guess my only question for them would be it be easier to either change the definition if we use stored elsewhere, or would it be easier just to clarify that in this section 1510-100 is to clarify?
I think stored or storage is only used like 4 or 5 times.
Okay.
So I could double check to make sure that it's consistent throughout, but I think, and I'll check this with Beth as well, that if we define it, it would probably be the same applicable definition in each section of Title 15.
That's
Okay.
my inclination also.
Yes.
Okay.
That works for me.
Right.
So tentatively, we're in agreement with all of the other changes, most of which have to do with changing written numbers to numerical digits. And the addition of the repetitive language under 1510.080, letter C.
Madam Chair, do we have to move on adding that to the definitions?
Well, we don't have it yet, so I would prefer that we wait and let her.
Wait till we receive it. Okay. Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Alderman Savage.
It sounds like we may be at a point where I can make a motion to recommend favorably as amended, and as amended, I guess, by the Rules and Government Committee.
And those amendments would be the unstriking of 1506 and 1506.04, 030, and 040. I think those, and then the addition of the definition, as we'll get from Ms. Leonard.
And the addition of for more than 2 days in 1506.090B.
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Bellis, did you want to add anything? I thought I saw you waving.
No, just twitching. I think this one, as I would have hoped it would have went, so I appreciate everyone's patience.
Well, thank you for being here and helping us walk through this. Rob, I'll entertain, or did you make the motion? You did
I made the motion.
Okay, and I'll second it. Further discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to, again, thank Harbor Master Bellis. I was impressed with your level of knowledge on all of this. I think it's incredibly helpful to have you come to this meeting and give us that detail. So thank you, and thank you for your obviously, again, strong care for wanting to make sure our laws are enforced properly and cleaned up. And thanks to the law office for wanting to clean up this language, which I know it's probably been like this for a while. So that's it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I think we've all learned more about toilets than we really cared.
Yes.
It is what it is.
And the bus is running again.
So having no further, I see Mr. Wiles with his fingers in his ears. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Is there anybody on the Environmental Matters Committee who would like to mirror that motion?
I'd like to make that motion that we amend this accordingly.
Okay.
As just stated.
Okay. I'll second that. And all those in favor from Environmental Matters, please say aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Before you do that, sorry, the motion should be to recommend favorably as amended. Not to
I'll
amend
restate.
it.
I motion that I motion that we recommend favorably these amendments
And the legislation.
and legislation.
Okay, I'll second that. All those in favor from Environmental Matters, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion carries. Back to you, Alderman Finlayson.
Well, that exhausts our agenda. We said we would only deal with that one item, and we have. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn the Rules Committee.
So moved. I'll make that motion.
Oh, thank you.
So I'll stay on.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, everyone, for helping us out, walking us through it, and sharing your wealth of knowledge. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman.
Great.
And is there a motion from Environmental Matters to adjourn?
I motion that we adjourn.
I'll second that. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Our meeting,
Thank you.
Environmental Matters is adjourned. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Kia.
Bye-bye.